All right, guys. So it's another episode with Sit Down with a Friend, and today I have a good friend, way across the pond. I have Mike Nilson from Washington, and Mike has been a good friend of mine, and we met at the Great Institute, and I had him on the podcast before, but I kind of want to have a free flow, more of a deep conversation with Mike about life, mindset, strength conditioning, leadership, and all that kind of good stuff. So I don't have anything written down. So Mike, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy.
Hey, anytime I get to hang out with you is a win. So I'm excited to be here.
Mike, let's start off by talking about the mindset that you have to have when you go to work. You're a strength and conditioning coach, you're a business owner, and you're a dad. What is some of the similarities in the mindset that you have to have between those three categories that you have to do each day?
The first thing that came to mind when you said that was, I don't know if it's a mindset as much as just being in the moment, being present. I always tell people that I love my work because when I'm at work, it does make me a better father. And if I'm going to be out of the house for 40 hours plus a week, I want to go to a place where it's filling me up, where it's adding to my life, where it's making me feel like it's in line with my purpose. So when I come home, I'm a better dad, I'm a better husband. And so I feel really lucky that I get to do something that I love and be around people that I love all day long. And so when I'm at work, I don't want to be thinking, oh, I'm leaving my family and I may be doing them a disservice. And then when I go home, I don't want to be thinking about work, thinking, oh, everyone else is working and I'm slacking, I'm home. I just really want to be at peace with where I'm at. And so it's kind of nice because I think there are some people that probably don't get a lot of self-fulfillment out of their job, don't feel like they're making a difference. But it just so happens that what I do, I love, and I feel like it's impactful. It makes me better. Hopefully makes my clients, my athletes better. And I think I'm a better dad and husband for it. So the first thing that came to mind was just being present. That's the mindset. It's not even, before you get to commitment and growth mindset, all that stuff. I think it's just being right here in the now.
I was re-listening and watching to some of the Gray Institute stuff, and then uh, I ran into I was watching Brad Gray. So Brad is Doug's oldest son, and he was talking about that and being present. And if I'm here with you, Mike, and you see that I'm looking all in the background and all that kind of stuff, or I'm in person talking to you, or you might be with one of your players, your kids, and you see that I'm preoccupied with something else going on here. What's the message that we get there? What kind of message am I sending you, right? Because if I'm here with you and it seems like I'm the only person, you're the only person that matters at the time. Well, that just gives you a message that you matter to me, right? That you matter to me. I'm here for you. So I think that's one of the things that we could definitely do better. I want to transition a little bit from that to talk about one of the events that you recently had in terms of health issues and how you got through that, and like the mindset that you had to get through that. Do you mind talking about that a little bit? Because I think there's a lot that we can learn from that experience.
I'd be happy to. 2020, I think, was stressful for most people. In addition to being the head strength coach here at Gonzaga, which is a full-time job, I own a sports performance physical therapy clinic, which is another full-time job. And the stress that went along with that was kind of doubled because I was notified maybe a year before the pandemic happened that there's a NCAA rule that says you can't own a sports performance clinic and work in the athletic department. And so I started U District 17, 18 years ago with two of my best friends. And so I got two business partners. And the thought of having to walk away from that business that we started together it just crushed me. And then I've been at Gonzaga since 1995 as a student athlete. So, I spent more time at Gonzaga than I did away from Gonzaga. And so the thought of quitting Gonzaga was just tearing me apart. And that at the time was the two decisions I thought I had to make: either sell U District or quit Gonzaga. And that was weighing on me quite a bit. And then, of course, the pandemic hits and we have to shut down U District and all the stuff that just went on, the political unrest and, Black Lives Matters here in the States was a huge deal. And you have a lot of emotions going on. And this whole time I'm just feeling this weighing on my heart, it literally just felt like someone was pushing against my heart. And I thought it was just stress. And then it started impacting my sleep where I wasn't able to sleep at night. And I wasn't telling anyone because I just thought, what are they going to say? Manage your stress better. Well, that's what I teach athletes how to do all day long. Yeah. So I started doubling down on stuff, and I really started dialing in my sleep routine. I do a lot of mindfulness meditations throughout the whole day. So I was really just diving into that and even doing it more and really dialing in my nutrition. I was just doing everything I could. And I started cutting out external responsibilities that weren't key to, my family and my job, just stuff that I like doing. Maybe I sit on a board, I help teach for the Gray Institute. And I just thought, some of these things just have to fall to the wayside. I got to make sure that I'm taking care of myself. And none of it was working. I just kept feeling this pressure on my chest. At night I would just lay awake, and it was really scary because I thought I was going to die. I was afraid to close my eyes at night. And so, and then, kind of embarrassed about it too, because I thought, oh, these are panic attacks. I just wasn't really sure. So I would just go up and I just play guitar in the office for a couple hours till I literally just couldn't keep my eyes open and I'd fall asleep. Well, finally I shared this with my wife, and she's like, you got to go to the doctors. And of course I go typical, oh no, they're just going to tell me it's stress. I'm fine. So she makes me go to the doctors, and they of course send me to a heart specialist. And when I get my echocardiogram back, I'm still thinking that it's just stress. Matter of fact, that Friday we have a basketball hoop in our garage. And so my son and I are shooting hoops 7:00 on a Friday night. My phone rings. I don't think much of it. And I checked my voicemail after, and it was my cardiologist saying, look online into your file. We got to talk about this ASAP. And so I'm like, what's he talking about? I open up my file, and it says, your aortic valve has failed. My heart's enlarged. The valve's calcified, needs immediate open heart surgery. And I'm like, oh. And so now I'm thinking, oh, okay, I got to tell my wife this, but I don't want to tell her until I got the details. And this is Friday night, so I'm not going to find out till Monday. So that was a rough weekend. And how I got through it was my friends and family are just awesome. My wife specifically, that was interesting, because then I had a month between when I found out and when I could actually get scheduled for heart surgery. And so that month, you couldn't go to work, and it was really hard on my kids too. They couldn't go to school. We just couldn't take the chance of me getting COVID because I didn't know what that meant. The cardiologist didn't know. So I had heart surgery, and that kind of takes you back to, there's no ego that's involved in heart surgery, because you can't go to the bathroom by yourself. You can't walk. And so thank goodness the nurses were just so kind to take care of me that week I was in the hospital. But it's been a definitely humbling experience. You just learn how interconnected we are in this fallacy of independence, that I could do it on my own. That was just totally shot to the ground during this process. You just learn you need help, and you need loved ones to kind of be there, be strong for you when you don't have the strength.
What's the biggest lesson that you took from that? And it could be like on life. Like what's the one or two biggest lessons that you took from that whole experience?
Probably the big one that comes to mind first is that everyone has the equivalent of what I went through. It might not be heart surgery, but everyone has some kind of struggle story that they're dealing with. People see me now and they don't know I have a big old scar down my chest, because I just look normal. And so they can't see my scar. They just assume that I'm just, happy-go-lucky, life is easy. But as I had the heart surgery and people kind of reached out, so many people said, oh, my dad, my brother, my grandfather had that same surgery. You find out how many people have gone through what I gone through, and then how many people have gone through worse. People that are battling cancer. We have one of our Gonzaga coaches right now that's battling cancer, and you just look, and even if it's not a cancer or heart surgery, everybody has some kind of struggle. And so it's kind of nice to kind of equalizes all of us and kind of bonds us together. I think that was a huge one. And one that we kind of talked about, which is kind of cool, is, one of the important things in my life is commitment, because when I learned the difference between a goal and a commitment, it was a life-changing thing for me. It's really impacted how I parent my kids and everything.
What is the difference between
So a goal is something that you want to do, and a commitment is something that you have to do. And I grew up setting goals, and I love goals. You need that big picture that kind of drives you. But the commitment is the daily thing that you have to do. It's the thing that carries you to the big goal, to the dream. And so that was one of the big things that came out of heart surgery too, is for the last 5, 6, 7 years, I've been doing a daily commitment, 15-minute commitment. I study one person or one thing for the entire year. And so last year I was studying nutrition through the eyes of Dr. Berardi and precision nutrition. And so what I found out is, when times were tough, the day I had open heart surgery, I still got my studying in. And that was just kind of a cool moment where I knew if I could do it even on that day, I could do it any day, because I always say, you make goals for your best days, you make commitments for your worst days.
Oh,
and
man.
So, those goals, when I think, man, when I'm 100%, when I'm inspired, the goal is the big thing that I want to accomplish. And the commitment is, even on the day you have heart surgery, even on the day where you have a migraine, when your girlfriend breaks up with you, when you tear your Achilles tendon, that commitment is still something that is your word and is who you are. And so I think that's been kind of fun, because if I can make it through that, I can make it through anything.
Right. What about the comeback to get from where you were in the hospital to where you are today? Like, what was going on through your mind? Like, obviously you were talking about commitment versus goal. You're obviously very committed to getting back to where you are. Yeah. But I feel like, and a lot of people don't talk about this, and I'll be the one that is vulnerable here. Sometimes we have doubts about, are we going to be the same as we were before? Are we going to be, do I have what it takes? I've never done open heart surgery before. Can I do this? Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I want to be the one to open up and be vulnerable. Like, by no means am I perfect. There's plenty of doubts that go on in my head every single day. And it's I have to consciously fight those self-doubting thoughts consciously. It's not like I only have positive thoughts. Can you talk a little bit about what it took mentally to get back to where you are today?
Well, two things on that would be, one is, I'm not a professional athlete anymore. That part of my life is the physically demanding piece is not what it used to be. And so I think my answer is going to be a little bit different now than it was 20 years ago, when I was scratching and clawing to get that last 1% out of my body or my mind. When I tore my Achilles tendon, I knew I wanted to get back and play professional basketball. And that rehab process was a little bit different than this one, because that one I was constantly pushing. And I think as athletes, we get so used to ignoring our body, ignoring the pain. This hurts. And you're like, shut up. It don't hurt. Don't hurt that bad. We're going to keep going, And I think there's a lot of good that comes out of that, of having the mind tell the body, you're tougher than you think. And in the rehab process, it was kind of a blessing this time to not have to push it, to really just pay attention to my body. And there was no ego involved. When I started lifting weights again, I started lifting with my son, Carter, who was 13. And so we both had 10-pound dumbbells. And I was like pretty nervous because I could just feel my ribs on every little press. And so, maybe once again, 20 years ago, I would have been embarrassed that I can only bench press the bar at a certain point. And this time, maybe it was just maybe a second lease on life, as I was just happy as heck that I was working out with my son. And so I think that was, maybe for the athletes listening, they might listen in and be like, well, it's really easy to pay attention to your body and take it slow when you don't have a timeline and you're already past the prime of your career. So I think that might have been a little bit different, but it just allowed me to breathe. And I think that kind of maybe led to the second point, which is, we've talked about just being present and enjoying the moment and trusting the process. And I was kind of at peace with whatever happened. I just knew I could just be my best. And once again, that's pretty easy to do when that my best might not mean that I can play basketball at the level I was before, but I was just happy that I could play basketball, especially when I couldn't walk for a while. I remember that first month or so, we have a flight of stairs in our house. I didn't walk up one flight of stairs. I walked up 2 stairs. I literally 2 stairs. I went up 1, up 2, and then down 2. And then I would go home and I would go back to the bed and take a nap. And the next day I'm like, I'm gonna walk up 4. And I just would do 2 stairs a day.
Nice.
And so when you have your sight set that low, now that I'm playing basketball with my son, it's just a huge blessing.
For sure.
So yeah, I don't know if the mindset stuff is that inspiring, but I do think there's just a lot to be said for, trusting the process. The other thing I did was I didn't think too much about it. I don't know if this is a good thing to do or a bad thing to do, but I didn't even know the details of my heart surgery because I didn't want to know them because I knew I would be scared if I thought about, hey, they got to, stop your heart and it's going to be beating on a machine, or they had to stop your lungs and a machine is going to be operating your lungs. I just didn't want to know. And because I was going to get heart surgery. So that was my mind. I'm going to do it. Yep. And so I just put all my trust in the doctors. And it wasn't until after I was better that on like my 6-month checkup, I said, hey, would you mind explaining, this process, exactly what you did? And because then I felt strong enough to think about it. But at the time, I think I knew I would be really scared. And so I thought, why put myself through that? And once again, I don't know if that's very inspiring, but it's just the truth.
That makes complete sense. I probably would have done definitely the same thing. And I don't know if you remember this, Mike, but actually for anybody who doesn't know, was it 2019, right? That was 2019. I also had ankle surgery. So I tore 2 to 3 ligaments in my ankle. And so that had to be reconstructed. It was December 29th. It was right around the time that Mike was going into surgery. Do you remember this, Mike? And we were talking through Instagram.
We were Instagram buddies.
Exactly. And then I was going in to do my little ankle surgery, and I was in the bed, and I was getting ready to go in, and I for some reason I was on my phone just before surgery, and I think I was talking to you, and then I was a little bit nervous. I have to be honest, but then I thought, you know what? Stop complaining. My man Mike is going into open heart surgery. You're just putting back 2 little ligaments. Like, stop complaining. So just to give you a perspective on what I was going through. So you were definitely motivation for me during that time, because what you were going through is significantly more, drastic and a much bigger operation at the time.
I don't know. I think what's kind of cool is if you talk to my heart surgeon, he would say it was the same. Matter of fact, he said, hey, don't take offense to this, Mike. This is what my heart surgeon's saying. He's like, but do you get nervous before you go and train the basketball team? And I'm like, no, I'm ready to go and I want to make sure it's a good workout, but I'm not nervous. And he's like, well, that's how I feel about heart surgery. I do this every day. And so he's like, I know it's a big deal to you, but you're going to be just fine. And so I think what's kind of cool is that was kind of my point at the beginning. Yeah. I go into surgery on December 29th. You're going into surgery. So many people are going through stuff. And in your world, ankle surgery is the biggest thing in your world. And heart surgery is the biggest thing in my world. And, for my son, the biggest thing in his world might be getting cut from a basketball team. Right. And it's all important stuff to that individual. And so it's kind of nice to know that we just got to have some empathy and compassion for people, because we're all just getting through it. So
if you don't mind me talking about your son, he's well on his way to be better than his dad at basketball. I'm just kidding. But he's a pretty well accomplished basketball player. As a former high level basketball player, how much mentoring do you do in that area with your son? Do you ask him to put work in? Are you proactive in terms of that? Or do you only help when he asks for help? How do you go about doing that? Because my wife and I are trying to have kids, and whether it's a son or daughter, it'd be awesome if they were into some sort of sports that I could kind of give them some advice on. For you, what's that balance as a parent where you obviously know what you're talking about and what you're doing, as to letting them find it out on their own?
Yeah, I have I don't know if that's a unique take, but it's definitely, it's a real clear-cut vision for how I like to do it with my kids. And my take on it is, most things are not fun when you're not good at them.
Yeah.
You know, guitar, if you don't play guitar and I handed you a guitar and you had all day to play, you would hate, it would be a horrible day.
Right.
You know, you'd feel uncoordinated. It would sound crappy. Your fingers would hurt. It would
Yeah.
not be fun at all.
No.
And so the idea for me is, hey, you know, if my kid wants to play guitar, he'll do it on his own. I'm not going to drive it. I'm not going to help. I'm only going to help if he asks. Well, my son's not going to ask for help because it's not fun. Right. And so my idea on this would be is, what are the things he's passionate about, and how can I walk alongside him and help get him, you know, through the dips so it is fun and he can put the work in, or even if it's something that he does not want to do, but it's something that I feel is important. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, like my youngest son, Memphis, he doesn't love basketball. He doesn't love any sports. He loves video games and YouTube. Mm-hmm. But in our family, we do something that's music because I love music, and they can do singing, guitar, piano. It doesn't matter. We're going to do some kind of music and we're going to do some kind of physical activity. And so he doesn't have one he likes. And so we're going to do basketball. And so it's kind of fun because I got to do this with Carter when he was young, and I got to see how it worked. And we'll just see how it works with Memphis and my daughter, Ella. But, you know, Memphis doesn't like basketball when he's younger. Well, of course he does. He doesn't know how to dribble. He doesn't know how to catch. And so we get out in the garage and we work on that. We do things that are fun. He's hanging out with Dad. We have the music playing. We do silly games that he could do. Like I bounce the ball off the ground and he's got to catch it 5 times in a row above his head. And, you know, we just kind of messing around trying to build up those skills. And we just do it all the time. And it might, when I say all the time, I mean 5, 6, 7 days a week. And it might just be for 5 minutes. Some days we have fun and he's loving it. We might be there for 30 minutes. But on the days where you could tell he doesn't want to be out there, then it's just 5 minutes. Hey, let's just try this out.
Yeah.
And it's fun to see when kids start getting better, how they can take it and then they want to go out and do it. You know, when they go with their friends and all of a sudden they can beat their friends in one-on-one, and I'm like, that's cool. And I used to think that was kind of, you know, that wasn't a good way of doing it. It wasn't pure, you know, like, oh, they're only going to like it if they're good at it. Well, that's not pure. But I go back to thinking about when I was in maybe 6th grade, there was a video game called Double Dribble on Nintendo. And I remember I wanted my dad to play this game so bad with me. And so my dad traveled all the time. He was like a suit wearer, never played video games. I finally got my dad to come in and play video games. I was so excited. We played Double Dribble together. And I was really good at it. Every time he inbounded the ball, I stole it and I dunked. And the score is 30-0. He hasn't even made it past half court. And he's like, Mike, this is not fun. If you keep doing this, I'm not going to want to play. But I was loving it. So I steal it, dunk it 20 more times. The score is 50-0. And he's like, I'm done. And he leaves. And I'm like, what a poor sport, you know? But I'm the same way. My son wants me to play video games. I'm like, it's not fun if you can't even, get past level 1 and you're just getting dominated. And so I think, man, most things in life are kind of like that. So leading up to Carter now, we did that same thing with Carter. Carter wasn't a great basketball player when he was younger. The kids didn't want to pass him the ball, and then we start building up his skill sets of dribbling, passing, shooting. And now, like, I love going out to the gym with them. I never say, I actually, sometimes I do. I'll say, hey, let's go out in the gym tomorrow. He's always like, yeah, let's go. But he works out. I mean, it's 95% on his own now. And I just try and create an environment. If you teach kids about growth mindset and the idea of loving a challenge and wanting to get better. And he's a good basketball player, not because he has good genes. He's a good basketball player because of the work he put in. And so you come to practice because you want to get better. And if those are the mindset of kids, then when you coach your kids, they actually like it. They like it because they know it's making it better. They're getting an unfair advantage, a shortcut to be able to, maybe go up that ladder a little bit faster than they could on their own. So I have a lot of friends that are like, I leave my kids alone. If they want me to help, I help. And I'm like, that's one way to do it. But I'm pretty on our family. We just do it and we put work in and we have fun doing it to the point where the kid can do it on his own.
Okay. And if they really dislike it could be anything like guitar, basketball, soccer. If they really dislike what you're trying to, so if you're trying to teach them guitar and like, Dad, I know this music thing is important to you. So could I try piano rather than guitar? Then is that like an okay for you?
Oh yeah, my daughter's a great example of this,
Right.
which is we played basketball, and it's just not her thing. But we had fun doing it, and she got pretty good.
Yep.
But she loves dance. I
Okay.
mean, you cannot stop her from doing dance and gymnastics. I mean,
Oh, cool.
I don't know how she has so much energy. Last night during the Super Bowl, she's just doing these continuous flips, and then it's a commercial, and she doesn't know, but commercials are my favorite part of the Super Bowl. But during the commercial, she's like, "Dad, watch my dance again." So I'm like, focusing as much as I can on her, knowing that this cool commercial is going on. But I love it because that's all I really care about. I don't care about basketball, but I want them to find something that is physical, that they can enjoy, that they
Right.
can practice being gritty at.
Right.
Because if they know how to be gritty with dance, then when she becomes a parent or a business owner or a coach or teacher, she'll know how to be gritty with that too. And so my son Carter loves guitar. Perfect. Well, my daughter loves piano. Okay, well, we're going to be gritty at piano. That's just, And so if Memphis wants to do drums, whatever they want to do, I just happen to know basketball and I happen
Right.
to know guitar. But yeah, and once again, that's just for my family. I don't think every person needs to do music, but I just think that's just an important part of me and what I want to be able to pass along to them. And I know in my heart, I think that most, if not all people, are drawn to music at like a spiritual level. There's going to be a song that will pump you up, or a song that will make you cry, or a song that will, bring you back to a moment in your life that was significant. And so I just know that if I can give them that gift and get them through the dip, then that's a gift they'll have for the rest of their lives.
It's more the lesson. It's more the lesson there. Going back to Carter's, you talked about him. 90% of the workouts that he does is on his own. How is the training that the kids do today different from when we were growing up, in your opinion? What are you seeing as different?
Oh man, there was no Strive Fitness when I was a kid. And so I look at everything they're doing, and it's so much more effective and efficient. And I think the internet's unbelievable. They can go on YouTube.
Give me an example. Sorry to interrupt. Give me an example.
Yeah. Okay. Just the simple thing. He's going to go out and he's going to do a mic and drill with the right hand, left hand, 5 different ways. And that's a little bit of the Gray Institute. It's a lot of Stockton stuff he's shown me. But, when I was a kid, I kind of did some of this stuff by default because I saw Michael Jordan do like an up and under. But the only way I could see that is if I was smart enough to record it on a VHS tape, and then I could watch it over and over again. But now the athletes can see Allen Iverson's crossover, and they could put it in slow motion and do it over and over again. And so like my son, he's such an unbelievable finisher because he'll go do 20 Micans, little jump hooks, then he'll go 20 reverses, then he'll go 20 sky hooks, then he'll go, like step backs. And his shot package inside 5 feet is so unbelievable because he's intentional with it. He has like a little system. And then, anything he does, he's left-handed. So anything he does to the left, he does to the right. All his different step backs, pull up, his footwork. So when I was younger, I was just playing basketball, and the moves that were successful, I figured out, and I would do those over and over again. And he's actually super intentional with his training. And now we just started lifting weights again. And same thing. I didn't start lifting weights until, when I was my freshman year, I went to the weight room, and my friends were upperclassmen, and they had 135 pounds on the barbell. They're like, "Hey, Mike, you want to do a bench press?" I'm like, "Sure." I'd never lifted before. And so I just figured they can do 135 pounds. So can I. So I grabbed the bar, and there's no clips on the end, on the plates.
Yeah.
And as I lower it down, I just lose all control. It's wobbling. Then one of the 45s falls off. And it's like, bam, just slams. Everyone in the weight room looks over. And by about that time, it lopsides. The other time slams. And I'm like, note to self, I'm never lifting weights again. So I probably didn't lift weights again until I was a junior or senior in high school. And I didn't, I do bench press and curls. There's no way I'm doing squats. Are you kidding? I get my legs strong by playing basketball,
Right.
And so just the knowledge that these athletes have, they can go and see what LeBron's workout is. They can go look it up and see what his prehab stuff looks like. So they're just so much further advanced than I was.
I was laughing so hard because that exact same story happened to me. I'm the skinny kid going over from Hong Kong to the States, and then my roommate happens to be a running back. And he's one of my best friends till this day. And he was 1 year younger than me, but so much more built than me. And Mike, I'll let you know that for me, it was 115, not even 135, right? And I couldn't even get up. And he's like, dude, you're older than me and you can't even get this up. Like, what's going on? So then, like, I remember the same thought. I was like, I am never lifting weights again. I'm going to go into my room, just do push-ups, but no, obviously, as you can see, this has changed significantly. In terms of going back to training, when you were younger, how much of it was structured and how much of it was playing? Like, just give me a rough ratio, as opposed to what Carter is going through now. How much of it is structured skill development? How much of it is playing? And then the follow-up question to that was, do you think it's good the way that it's happening now? So what was the ratio for you when you were younger?
Just a quick thought would be 90-10, 90 unstructured, 10% practice games, maybe even more, maybe 95-5. My family didn't play sports. My dad was not an athlete. My mom was not an athlete. It just was just not in the cards. So the only reason I got into basketball was my best friend who had lived 2 blocks over. We met the first day of kindergarten. His dad was the high school basketball coach. And so he was the one that kind of got me going in hoops. But it was just playing in my front yard with my cousins. And as I got into high school, it was definitely more structured. And maybe in high school, it was more like 80-20, 70-30. And when I say unstructured, it was me alone doing stuff.
Yeah.
And then 30%, I didn't have skill trainers when I was in high school. Yeah. I didn't have strength conditioning coaches. So the difference is what my son does, he still does a lot on his own. So I would probably say him is probably 80-20, 80 on his own, but that 80% is more structured. So the 80% is, gosh, I'd say half the time I go out in the garage with him, and then I'll put my shoes on and we'll do drills together. We'll do follow the leader. We'll work on different skills that I'm seeing him maybe struggling with or need to improve. And then we play one-on-one. But even the structures, even the one-on-one, even though it's fun, in my mind's eye, it's structured, which is we might play from 5 different spots. Or like, hey, today you're going to be doing it off the dribble, or today we're going to play in the post. Whereas before, the only time we just played one-on-one from the very top of the key every single time.
Yep.
And we had unlimited dribbles. Right. And so with him, I'm like, yeah, you only get 3 dribbles. So it definitely more structured. And do I think it's good? I think it's good for him. What we're looking at with Memphis is totally different. My daughter, Ella, I just know Carter has a really disciplined personality, and he asks great questions, and he wants to be efficient and effective. He'll say, hey, Dad, will you write me a little workout up that I could do? He wants to make the most out of his time. So I think it works for him. I do think there's a lot of great stuff that comes out of free play. And so even that, I consider what we do, the 80% still structured, because I'll call up his buddies or text his buddies' parents and say, hey, next Friday, I'm having an open gym. No parents, no coaches allowed, but we have to get all the kids there. And, part of that is just Spokane is spread out. He can't walk. He's 14. He can't walk to any of his friends' houses. There's no gyms available. So unfortunately, there's, you have to rent the gym time now if you want to be able to get into a gym, and kids need rides. So I think for him, it's what's really good. I think maybe in a perfect world, it would be a little less structured, but, for the average kid. But I think for Carter, it works for him.
Cool. Now I want to dive into a segment like that you and I really never talked about, because we always go into the mindset and all that amazing stuff. But I realized after watching a few of our interviews that we never actually talked about strength and conditioning, even though that's what you and I do exactly. And now I'm going through the Great Institute stuff for probably the 3rd time, just because I've been so busy. But you know what? The great thing about that stuff is I learn something every single time I go through it. And the thing that resonates most with me this time around is the PST process. And it's just an amazing process of where you start with principles, move into strategies, and then you go into technique, But the technique part, correct me if I'm wrong, Mike, a lot of people would look at it as that's the candy, right? That's the candy. Give me the candy, give me those techniques. But without understanding the principles behind everything, and this could be for anything, it's not just strength and conditioning, it's skill development for basketball. And the thing about a strategic way to manipulate or get what you want to get out of the body or out of a skill, then finally you come to the technique. Talk a little bit about how the PST process has kind of influenced you as a coach, if it has at all, and how you think about it every single day when working with your athletes.
To me, that is the best thing I've gotten out of the Gray Institute, and I use it everywhere. You know, we talk about COVID, I'm using the PST process. When we talk about parenting, I'm using the PST process. It's just foundational to who I am now, because when I learned about it, it's kind of like when I learned about the difference between a goal and a commitment, my life changed. When I learned the difference between a principle and a technique, and how the strategy kind of ties the two together, is kind of the magic. If you are a master at creating great strategies, you're going to be a master parent, coach, teacher. So yeah, I use that a ton. I'm not tied to the techniques. I always tell people the techniques don't matter, you know. So you maybe even heard a little bit of when we started talking about guitar. Guitar is just a technique. What if your daughter wants to play piano? You know, the principle to me is the music, something that touches your spirit. Basketball doesn't matter. What if it's dance? What if it's golf? Who cares? But to me, I think that mind, body, spirit, we need something physical for the body, because that's a third of who we are. And really it's all of who we are. You know, it's not like it's one third. So then I think the beauty of it is I feel really solid, and I'm so, like bought into the PST process, but I'm not that bought into the technique. I like my philosophy and my strategy in here. You know, when you look at the actual workout we did today, you know, whether or not you say, hey, should we have done a multi-directional lunge or a step up or a squat? I'm like, I don't know, you know, like,
yeah.
but to me, the thought process is really important. So it's as much as I buy into it, it's still hard for me, because if I get on Instagram and I see really cool techniques that are hot and fresh, and then I start feeling insecure, and I keep having to tell myself, that's just a technique. And yes, I love that. But that's, you know, it didn't fit in with my strategy for today. You know, it didn't fit in with the big picture. So I think you're right on as far as when you're going through that again. To me, I want to keep getting better at the strategy. I gotta know the principles better: gravity, ground reaction force, mass and momentum. You know, in life, one of the things that we're working on, a principle right now, is forgiveness. My wife and I are reading a book on forgiveness. And to me, that's a foundational principle. If you're going to be a strength coach, you better understand gravity and ground reaction force. And I think if you want to be a good husband or father, in my case, I better understand forgiveness. To me, that's a core principle. And then, so we got to create strategies for how we're going to implement that, how I'm going to ask for forgiveness. I just had to do it today. And then, of course, you know, forgiving people is a little easier than asking forgiveness, for me at least. So yeah, it's kind of a tangent, but yeah, I love that PST process.
I love how this was supposed to be the strength and conditioning component, but I love how you can apply it to all different parts of your life. And I was thinking about, when it comes to basketball skill development, how it applies to me and all the techniques, right? But at the end of the day, we're trying to get principles. But you just mentioned, like, in terms of parenting, in terms of marriage, like how these things can apply to just every aspect of your life, which is, like, you've opened my eyes in terms of that, because I really never took that process and applied it to outside of kind of what I do professionally. Okay, going back into the strength and conditioning component. So, Mike, since you are a GIFT fellow and a fellow applied functional science, how much of what you do with your players is based on what you learned through the Gray Institute, and then how much of it might be stuff that you might have learned outside of the Gray Institute?
Well, my understanding of the Gray Institute now is that it's all Gray Institute stuff, because if it fits into the PST model, then it turns into a Gray Institute stuff. Because I used to do a sagittal plane lunge, a forward walking lunge.
Yep.
That was a traditional movement. And then when you understand the PST, principle, strategy, technique, And then if my strategy is I want to work on something that's like a direct drive, well, that becomes a sagittal plane lunge. And now I have a better understanding of why I'm doing it versus, in my certification, it said that one way to build strength is to do a sagittal plane lunge versus, man, what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to strengthen this movement or make this movement more elastic or condition this movement, whatever I want to do with this movement. Now, all of a sudden it turns into functional. And a lot of times we think function is just, hey, well, it has to be a frontal and a transverse plane. But really, the Gray Institute just teaches that everything is functional. And there's no such thing as a bad movement. There might be a bad time to do or a less optimal time, maybe a wrong place to put it in the program. But so now as I'm doing stuff, if you watched my workout today, you're going to see stuff that's just super traditional. But now I know why I'm doing it. I'm not just doing it because someone else did it. I'm doing it because I want to get this, I want this hormonal response. And that's why I'm doing this sets or reps or why I chose this weight. Hey, I'm doing this exercise, but here's the speed I want to do it at, or here's the range of motion I want to do it at. I think that PST process is probably the best thing I ever learned. And then the second best was the 10 observational essentials, because then as we go through, we could take what we kind of would consider functional versus traditional and realize that everything is just on this spectrum and nothing is functional. Things are just more functional or less functional for what you want to do.
Right.
And so a squat could be more functional for what I want to do if I change the range of motion, if I change the platform, if I change their stance, if I change the speed, if I change the load. And so it's kind of nice to just know that you have these 10 little variables that you can change to kind of hopefully create the stimulus that will impact the athlete so they can make it an adaptation.
Cool. Now, I know that a lot of strength coaches listening will have this question. And I think that oftentimes these are the questions that I get. How much are you looking into developing like force production? How important is that to you versus developing the athlete to move functionally? Because I think, like, at least in my journey, a lot of the stuff that I encountered in the beginning was the Mel Sif, the Bonder Chucks, which is obviously great stuff, a little bit more traditional stuff. How much of that in your workout do you have as opposed to like three-dimensional stuff that they teach at the Gray Institute?
Yeah, and this might be one of my weaknesses. I think there are certain things that I do really well as a strength coach, and maybe those come a little more in the form of the leadership piece or, the relationships, the being able to maybe see where people are at and be able to make adjustments. I think I do a good job with nutrition. Some of the things where I feel like I'm not as strong, it might be some of the stuff that we're talking about now is actual program design, because what I find myself doing is sometimes doing a little bit of everything, which might not be enough of one thing to create that adaptation.
Right.
And so, this time of year is a little bit different because I see them twice a week now with strength conditioning. We lift on a Monday, which is today, and then we'll lift Wednesday, but they have a game Thursday, Saturday. So my time with them is slim. And so what I'm doing now is I'm trying to do, the minimum effective dose. And I'm checking in with the coaches and athletic trainers to be able to kind of see what their load's like. What are these little nagging injuries? How's their spirit? How's their recovery? How's their energy doing? We do a great job supporting them with nutrition, but they might not be doing a good job on the sleep or the managing stress piece of it. So this time of year, I'm really, a little more reactive than proactive in terms of, okay, I think the benefit of having your own strength coach, that my only responsibility as women's basketball is I can know the big picture. I already know what the periodization looks like and what the travel of the season is going to be, but I can see what does the team need today. Is a team just so beat up? Last week we had 3 games. We played Thursday, Saturday, Monday, Thursday, Saturday, and now it's Monday again. And so I think the benefit of me is I kind of know what I think they might need, but then I could go and I could touch with the coaches. I can be there. I was at film today and I was at practice, so I could kind of see what the spirit's like. And that allows me to kind of react and really put together a program that I think is what's best for them today, still in line with the big picture. Now, the reason I'm telling you all this is because I think I do a better job of looking at something like force production or just flat out just strength and being able to say, okay, this is summer session 1, these 6 weeks. We're going to work on just load. That will be one of the big things we're going to look at. We're not going to look at maybe, height, duration, or height, directions, some of that tripod type.
Yeah.
Yeah. We might look, because I think that's the nice thing is when we think about function, sometimes I just think of just the 3D-ness of it. But with the Gray Institute and their certification of applied functional science, they talk about those other variables, tweaking the position, the speed, the load, the duration, all of those things I think are pretty important. And so even on a traditional lift, like I said today, if we might do a squat, and just tweaking the range of the squat makes it more functional for basketball. And so maybe a traditional strength coach might say, or even if I was doing a sagittal plane lunge, that's kind of old school, or that's just traditional. And I'm like, well, it's just utilizing one of the 3 planes of motions. And then when you start adapting the range of motion and the speed and the load and the intent, then I think you can get something that's pretty specific to that athlete.
Right. And that's something I've always, at least for me, I always ask strength coaches. I think for me now that 80% of what I do, at least from a strength component, is from the Gray Institute, where it was very, I had it the other way around, because after meeting Gary, I feel like movement is like your ceiling or your cup. Okay. And then the strength and power is simply the water, but you want to basically have a big enough cup to be able to have enough, the water inside to be able to hold enough water. And so after being able to examine and analyze movement and function and then what we call FMR and all that kind of stuff, really has kind of expanded the glass for me. So I always ask strength coaches that I meet at the Gray Institute, how often, how do you combine the traditional force production with functional movement that we use here? Because obviously it's not like I saw no results with increasing force production and rate of force development, but it's like, how does this all blend in together? So yeah, that's something I always ask strength coaches. And in terms of the nutrition part, I also had a great experience with PN2, and they're great staff over there. They're very supportive. How was your experience with that? Because for me, one of the most unique things is that they teach the art of coaching and the as well as nutrition itself. How do you feel like you can apply that to your team, Mike?
Yeah, I just think the art of coaching is the most important piece, because at least what I'm going to help athletes with is not a whole bunch of nutrition science.
Right.
I don't have to dig down into amino acid profiles. I mean, basically I'm like, hey, are we eating breakfast, lunch, dinner? Are you getting a couple snacks in? Are you getting a post-workout meal? Are you getting enough protein? Are you getting enough carbohydrates after training? Getting enough healthy fats. It's just such basic stuff that if my athletes are eating 5 times a day and they're getting enough dense carbohydrates, fruits and vegetables, if they're getting quality protein throughout the day, we're going to be so far ahead of the game. But you just can't tell athletes to do it. There's the coaching side. There's even here is such high level problems, but we have a great nutrition program here where the athletes are able to get handhelds. And so we're able to give them wraps or burritos, those kind of things before practice. After practice, we have a training table where we have 2 different protein sources. We might have a chicken and a fish. We'll have 2 different kinds of carbohydrates. Might be a rice and a sweet potato. We'll have vegetables. I mean, they have great food. And now some of the problems that we deal with is, God, we've had wraps every single week for 2 months. Can we get something else? And on one hand, you're like, wait, you're going to complain that you're getting meals paid for, delivered into your locker room between classes. You're going to complain about that. And on the other hand, I get it. You eat something enough, and even if it's good food, you start to get tired of it. So some of the stuff that we have to, and our athletes are grateful. They say it in a really grateful, appreciative way. They say, hey, we don't want to waste money, it's getting to a point where like, I don't know if I really want to eat this. I'm kind of saving it, for later. What if we switched out the wrap for something else, for a sub or for a sandwich? So I think with the nutrition piece, it's really being able to say, like, how do you get the athletes to do what they know and take it to the average human being? The average human being knows they should move more. They should be active. They should eat less sugar, less junk food, eat more fruits and vegetables. We all know that. Very few of us actually do it consistently. So we don't have to know more. We just have to be able to apply what we know. And I think that's what PN does such a great job of, is the progression, meeting people where they're at, and then building habits that will allow them to start implementing and build routines of what they already know. And so that's been fun for me because we have a lot of resources here. And then my job is just to check in with the ladies. How you feeling? How's your breakfast going? Hey, what if you tried this for breakfast? That you're not feeling hungry for lunch. Well, maybe we might adjust the snack time. And so then it kind of gets fun because we're just looking at their schedules and just tweaking stuff slightly.
It's all about those tweaks, right? Tweaking
The
up, tweaking down. Yeah.
Tweakology.
Tweakology at its best. Tweakology at its best. Well, Mike, you've been so generous with your time. I appreciate this. Most people on my podcast would know, but tell us about some of the good stuff you're going on. Tell us about your podcast. Tell us where we can find more about you.
Well, the podcast is back after episode 100. We were doing it every single week. So for however many 50 something weeks, every single week I launched an episode. And with the stress of season, I thought it was best to go to a monthly podcast. And so I just launched in January an unbelievable episode. You might know this guy. He's the owner of Strive Fitness, basketball strength conditioning coach, Gray Institute fellow of applied functional science, one of my great friends. Do you know this guy?
No.
So he was, he's also, he doubles as a male model. I mean, the guy is he's like Superman. So, Will, you were kind enough to be on my podcast. And actually I have Bryant St. Pierre from Precision Nutrition, strength coach or nutritionist for San Antonio Spurs back in the day. And so he's one of the content creators for Precision Nutrition. He'll be on my podcast. It actually launches tomorrow. So go check out Hoop Commitment. It's on all the different platforms. That's probably the best place you'll be able to find me.
Awesome. Mike, again, thank you so much for coming on. And guys, I highly recommend checking out his podcast. There's so many good guests, jam-packed with useful information that you can apply to yourself right away. Thank you, Mike, for being on the show. And then guys, we will see you next week. Mike, just hold the line.